there. Welcome to this episode of the Skiff Meetings podcast. Now, this podcast episode is about AI. Before you say, hey, another episode, another piece of content about AI, bear with us. This is taking a very different approach. We're asking some serious questions about the usefulness of AI and whether AI has actually jumped the shark. In other words, has AI really overcome its usefulness? Are we beyond the first positive impressions of AI? And of course, this is a tough question to ask. We don't know the future, but we do know a lot of things that are working right now, a lot of event tech tools that are using AI in different ways. And with me to discuss this is Cheng, also from his Mandarin name, Yisheng Cheng, the founder and lead strategist of Curious Bear Management. And he has a lot of interesting things to say about how he uses AI, how he's advising others to use AI. And we go into the depths of really what's actually working, what's impressing people, and what are people stepping back from around AI and tools that use AI around event technology. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. I enjoyed definitely recording it and talking about this topic. And don't forget to check out the other episodes of the Skiff Meetings podcast. Subscribe, of course, and rate the podcast and review, because that really helps us get more listeners. Stick around. Hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Skiff Meetings podcast. I am delighted to be joined by Cheng today, an old colleague, friend, person I know from the industry, but also maybe I shouldn't say Cheng, I should say Yisheng, which is actually Sean's original Mandarin name. Sean, or Yisheng, welcome to the show. Want to touch base, start there. Let's talk about your name. I know this is quite common with people from, with Mandarin kind of being the first language, but you don't normally use Yisheng. So want to start there and welcome you to the show with your real name. I don't know if I should say your real name, but your kind of Mandarin name, right?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Miguel. And I think you pronounce it properly. It's Yishan, and it is my Mandarin names. And I'm originally from Taiwan, and I actually choose Shang when I moved to Canada about 15 years ago. And it was out of, I think it's a common immigrant story, right? Like when you enter a new countries and you want to fit in. And 15 years ago, that's what you do. You kind of pick an English name so everyone can pronouncing it. And I think that's kind of coming to lately for the past couple of years that I think across different culture, though, I think everyone is starting to not. I don't like to use the word reclaim your culture or your name, because we never, at least I never cross it out. Like on my passport, it's always my Mandarin names, and I didn't really talk about it. But I think it just I started putting this on my signatures, and a lot of people knows this is my Mandarin's names, and I'm really proud of it. Ishan
Right.
is represent fly freely, which I think is actually really a beautiful name that kind of represent my personality as well. So.
Great. Well, glad we could start there. Now, we met in Vancouver, I believe, in 2010 at the
Yeah.
MPI WC event. I think you were a student or recently graduated at that point. Am I correct?
I am student. I think I'm about 3 months to graduation.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first biggest industry events, and definitely
Okay.
hold a special place.
Yeah, definitely. That was a memorable event. I think Vancouver had, I think not that long ago, hosted the Winter Olympics. So there was a lot of kind of
Yes.
flair around the city. It was kind of a special time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really interesting. And then you went on to work for MCI for a number of years, did a number of different roles, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
you're on your own, I believe, right?
I
Curious
am.
Bear Management. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no. So actually, after WEC, I end up picking up a summer job with Tourism Vancouver, and then I stay with the CVB for a couple of years, and then have the opportunity to join MCI, the Canada office, and that basically kind of my cornerstone. I would say my growth in the industry, be able to do quite a variety of different projects and client. And then it's really actually after the post-pandemic. I think pandemic definitely effect on everyone's in different level, and for me, it's kind of like an interesting time for starting a new chapters. And then I went on to work a variety of different project. I work for a U.S. marketing agency, who's also, I believe she's on the podcast before, Dalia Alcazar, for like a few years, to tapping into the marketing and consulting sides. And it's really starting from last year. I was just starting to want to do something on my own. I think the thought behind it is, there's a lot of things I want to do, but is limited for you to do it when other people decide what project you're working on. And that's kind of how I starting to do it on my own. So right now I'm working with a variety of different people. So I still working with quite a few. Actually, I work with quite a few different planner around the world, different agencies, picking up different projects. But I also have my own projects. And I was always joking that for the past year and a half, the biggest lesson learned that I have is I cannot complain anymore. It's
When it's your own
because
company and you make the decisions, you can't complain,
exactly
right?
right. You choose the client, you choose the projects, and when you work for someone else, it's always the guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
You complain with your colleague on
sure.
things to make you feel better, but not anymore. But again, no regrets.
And what do these projects look like? What does Curious Bear Management really specialize in?
To be fair, like it's still a discovery work in progress.
Mhm.
But I would say most of the client and what the project I would like to do are a meaningful business meetings, and so mainly are conference and association gathering for now. What I find out that I think most of my passion and my strength so far is helping the client to growth. And then that is most of my projects are. So they are either um, small trade show who struggle during the pandemic and need to rebuild, or they are regional association who never hired an event professional before, but now they need to, and they see the big difference, or working with a giant volunteer committee who used to do everything and now need to help them to guiding so there is a better way to do it. And so that's kind of the project that I have been starting to get involved. Kind of what's the next step actually is I am starting to go into working on some research project actually that I'm quite excited about. That I have some conversation with a few different companies and that's probably pretty in line with the conversation we may have later on is all around data that I think I'm going to involve with some very exciting data projects that hopefully that will help demonstrate some of the assumption or some of the theory that industry always have on how attendee behavior look like and people might want to. So pretty exciting about it. I think in general is anything that keep me curious and that is a project I'm getting on. That's what the name about.
That's the name, Curious Bear. And you've also kept going something we started a while back, right? The Event Profs Break Shit, which is the kind of testing of event technology, which is an area that you're also quite focused on. You did some work recently with PCMA, I believe, at the Convening Leaders and the EduCon event where you tested out some technology live. Is that's also a project that you're passionate about?
Yes. So I think the thing we start now is into probably the third or fourth year, right? And it started out from just the frustration of the event tech solution are not able to communicate properly with the planner like us. And then that kind of expanding into something I think it's almost become an advocate project, in my opinion, is try to take the active role of help to bridge both sides. And the approach, at least from my perspective, is to design a session or environment that will that will make it easier for the planner to consume, but at the same time also allow planner to share their feedback in a non-biased and more honest way, so the tech company will be able to hear and listen. And
So
so,
just for people
fortunately,
listening,
yeah,
I mean, these sessions, this is what I think the session looks like, but you can correct me. So you
yeah.
have something like five technology representatives on stage that sort of pitch their software with a limited time, and then the audience responds to that and sort of votes on which ones they like best. How does that part work? That part of the design?
So funny enough, that was actually one of the idea, but it actually didn't really fulfill because for variety of reason. I think for what we have been doing for the past at least 2 rounds with PCMA, so we did actually 3 rounds. So I think for the EduCon last year, Convenient Leader this year, and EduCon this year, who just passed a couple of weeks ago, we worked with them and basically we curate 2 things for them. One is we curate a list of technology who either unheard of in the industry, or even they heard of, they probably have something that people don't know about it or people want to learn about it. And then secondly, we based on the tech company that we are able to curate and gather, we design session accordingly. And what we have been trying to do is for each tech company have a chance to shine, but in a way that is not just a sales pitch. So, for example, with the AI startup who are making its way a name in the industry, who claim that their product is a generative AI tool designing for the event industry. So instead of using ChatGPT, you can using them because they speak the language of event planner. And so instead of have them, get on stage and talk about it, we design a competition. So we actually put them right in the center and with no filter, and have them compete with people either with other AI tools or with people who have no AI tool, and then to see how the result look like in a timely fashion. And honestly, the result was very fascinating. It's that people be able to see how they work, and whether they like it or not, they see it live. But at the same time, we also find out there's a lot of the user behavior that no one can think about before we start seeing people kind of how they're using it, how they react to it live. So that's kind of what the whole spirit of event preparation at the beginning is, to not just for the planner to test it, but also give the tech company a rare case to see how their product being used, and therefore they can take it back to either fix something or to improve something.
Makes sense. So you had a sort of a case study or a scenario, right? And then you asked part of the group to work on something with AI, with the help of AI, and another part of the group to work on something without AI. So it was a kind of a competition element, right? And then what
Yeah.
we wrote, I think was from the convening leader session. So in January was that the ones that didn't use AI actually won. So there was a sort of a
Exactly.
judging panel as well, right? And ultimately the ones without AI won. And I think it was that they were a bit more creative. So the AI created something much more detailed, but it wasn't as creative as the non-AI kind of group, right?
Yeah. And then so for EduCon just a couple of weeks ago, I think PCMA probably gonna write about it, is we take this step further, but this time is the other team are also using AI, but they can use any AI tool except the AI tool that the
It's
company are
okay. You can
present.
mention brands. It's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's Spark AIs, and so the other side they are using cloud. They're using ChatGPT. They're using all the other tool that you can thinking about and compete with Spark AI. And funny enough, actually, again, Spark AI didn't win the round because we have 3 rounds of competition. But
Okay.
the discussion was very fascinating. Again, is really because it's still showing how I think that there's a lot of use case about AI is it come down to you need to think about who actually the user. So for using the competition as the example is the Spark AI team are the Spark developer who are competing with 3 planner who are using other AI tool. And although the Spark team, they know their product very well, when you are in a competition perspective, or when you've been handing over a task, the thought from a planner is still very different than a thought from a software engineer,
Mhm.
and that directly impact how the prompt you are giving to the AI, and then that directly impact how the result will look like. And so this is just something that I think is just it's fascinating to see, right? It's not about you had a you can try to create a tool as much as you want that you think will help the end user. For our case, the event planner, but until the end user actually using it, you won't really know how they actually will use it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Hmm.
So, I want to unpack that a little bit. I mean, it's interesting that Spark AI had their sort of development team being there. That almost feels like cheating, but I could see how that might have actually worked against them because they're
Yeah,
not planners, right? They're developers. So
yeah.
they can create a prompt that comes out with a really nice answer, but it doesn't mean that that answer has the most value, right? Whilst a real planner will be asking and also will be able to detect what has real value from what the AI produces.
Yeah, and because I think that is one of the common mistake on AI user case this day is no matter how you use AI or no matter what AI tool you are using, um, as an end user, which as a human being, we always need to double check it, right? We still need to go through the answer and then re-edit it in a way that we believe as a human makes sense. And that is a common mistake because we think AI can save our time and they can maybe basically do our job. The first one is correct. They can potentially save our time, but the second part is just never the true case. Is they will never be able to replace the end user because we will still know what is the best way to like, or we still know what is the answer we wanted, right?
Okay. I mean, from a media perspective, my view on that is you can get any of the leading AI companies to create blog posts
Mhm.
and kind of content that looks very normal, looks decent, looks like it's been interesting, has a sort of a structure, has a flow to it, and kind of makes sense. But when you actually read it, when you go into it in detail, there's not usually a lot of substance in there. There's usually a lot of, kind of fancy sentences, interesting ways of saying things, or things that sort of sound, lots of adjectives, lots of expressions. But when you come down to it, I rarely see, or when I know that something's been created by AI, or I suspect,
Mhm.
there isn't usually a lot of substance in there, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like this goes back to an example that I've used a lot, which is when a person wants to use AI to help them, they'll give them kind of 3 bullet points and then say, write an article based on these 3 bullet points or something like that. And it can do that. And then if you want to, the expert reader that reads the article might ask AI to take the article and distill this article into 3 bullet points, and end up with pretty much the same thing. Because really, if all you're saying are three simple things, the AI is just adding a lot of fluff. Is
Yeah.
that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I think that's specifically for a lot of the creative work, right? That you, and then I'm like I personally experienced that actually for the past few months. Is I did realize because so when AI first came in, or at least when generative AI, to be more specifically, first become massive adoptive, uh, it was fascinating to me, and I personally experienced a tremendous help because of it. So and I remember last year for like I'm able to run three different events with three different marketing needs and campaign all by myself last year, just because of the help of AI, right? Because of the help that you can put in a three simple prompts and you come up with the contents. And then you still added it, right? Like don't get me wrong, you're still editing a little bit and but it really helped you to speed up. Um, but this year what I kind of realized and the thing is that the more you're putting out the more you realize is how similarity they are
Mhm.
and how much like you say how much fluff they are, right? And you're kind of like losing that unique voice in some way for what you should technically for every individual project, right? So that I think so I actually start using it last this year. Not because I don't believe in it, but it's actually really because I feel I kind of haven't been able to figure it out the
Yeah.
way that I would then satisfy.
So, do you think AI can ever really replace an expert?
That's a really good question. The thing is, I think the answer really is don't I don't know, but I think it depends on how the definition of expert is,
Mhm.
right? Because if the expert is um, unique creative contents or decision, then I don't think they will ever able to. But if the expert mean uh, extended knowledge on operate on a certain tool or database or using or a certain skill, then I actually think AI can potentially, right? It's almost like when email first came into place, like that is I believe at the time, I don't think I even born yet, but I believe at the time there is a debate that if the typewriter will ever be replaced, right?
Mhm.
Because who will use email? But
Yeah.
like look right now, right?
Okay. I mean, so I guess my view on that is somewhat mixed in the sense that I think replacing expertise is always a tricky topic, and it's very hard to really know what the future holds, of course.
Yeah.
But what I've heard from some AI experts is that if you can explain what an expert does, if you can break down the process, and I think the easiest example is to think about this in sort of medical terms.
Mhm.
Obviously, quite a delicate topic, and I'm not by any means suggesting that we should do this, etc. But if you're looking, I've seen examples, for example, of AI looking at X-rays and saying, does this patient have something that we should look at, like a tumor or whatever, and this is something we should look at, and an AI can detect, or AI can be used with image recognition, etc., to detect really small things that might not be visible to the naked eye or to kind of things like that. And the argument is that if you can explain to the AI what you're looking for, if you can actually map out your mental process of what you're doing when you're scanning an X-ray in this example, then there's no reason why the AI can't do it just as well as you do. Do you subscribe to that, or do you kind of say, "Wait a second, this isn't really"? And I know this is quite an extreme example. I'm not. I don't want to put you in the position of a doctor or anything like that, but I think it's an easy example to visualize, right?
Yeah, totally. And actually, I think so. It come down to I think based on what the AI expert described, theoretically, it is possible, right? Theoretically, I think the reality is we just never be able to see it in a very complete version. The reason is the human expert will always involve, right? Like let's say using
But
the
isn't that
doctor.
what AI is by definition? Machine learning,
Yeah,
the definition is it learns, right? It gets
yeah.
better as it does the processes.
Yep, it is. And then technically you can do it, right? Technically you can have multiple experts trained on a certain AI machine. So theoretically that AI machine will equipped with all the knowledge from all the different experts, right? And I think honestly that is something I will even think all the professional associations should think about it, right? That is something like I think I remember I think I saw something on the article lately is that is actually quite a few company are trying to do, or at least in a
Yeah.
certain profession, is to train a AI that that can somehow equip with more knowledge of that certain profession or some way. But the
Let's
problem
bring it.
is you still
Oh,
need but the problem is at least and we might eventually accepting the fact that AI is smarter than us. We might, and then we trust the AI. But the problem is, at least I think for now we won't. Right? For now, there's always that due diligence task need to happen, and I think it's a constantly battle here and there. But I personally I don't think that we can completely block it or say it won't happen,
yeah.
but I don't know how fast it will happen in our lifetime, to be fair.
Well, it seems to be happening a lot faster than anybody predicts, right? So that's always
True,
interesting.
true,
Let's take it to a more practical example, more on the planner perspective, or at
right.
least related to planner work. One area that I've seen, that's always hard to do is poster sessions.
Right.
the job of approving a poster. And again, I think it's the kind of thing where you can definitely document the process that
Hmm.
people go through, right?
Hmm.
Is it the citations? Is it the references? Is it the number of authors? Is it the schools that they belong to? There's all these things that I believe in most cases the specialists in each area will be looking for in a
Hmm.
poster, and then say, to kind of judge whether it's valid. And I think for most events, I don't know this for sure, but I think for most events there is a significant proportion of the posters that get approved, right? I think some events might be very stringent, but it's sort of in the event's interest to also approve and have a number of posters present, right? So it's in their interest to approve as long as they're valid in some way. So um, it's not a kind of stamp of like, this is genius, this is something that is definitely correct. It's like, this research was conducted according to our parameters, which sounds to me like something that you could relatively easily train AI on doing.
Yeah, technically yes, right. And I think that is also, but I do want need to say I think for a different industry, it's a little bit different, right? It really depends on the need of the presenting of their research is, right? I believe for some industry or for some sector, I think probably the better term is uh poster session is very important in a way that is also that's almost serve as a training methods for the young researcher, for the doc, for the postdoc or for the doc student, right? They're presenting a research, but the reason they are not in the main room doing an oral presentation is really very likely it's because the poster it's because their research is more like a student project, right? It's
Yeah,
important, but they are not at the level uh of like in terms for quality, they are not at the
sure.
level of
And
needing
that's
to,
kind of
right?
why I'm suggesting I'm not saying that AI, at least at this point, is selecting which speakers should be on stage,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
more selecting which poster should be approved. Because, I mean, in my experience, if you have a 4,000 person event that I've done in the past, I think you had 1,200, 1,500 posters.
Yep.
So a third of your audience roughly is at the event because they are
The
presenting a
presenter.
poster.
Yep.
So it's a huge part of academic and kind of medical conferences, right?
And then I think, so, in that case, I actually think is a good idea to implement some sort of AI scanning tool, right? It's almost like if you think about it right now, for HR, you always have the resume scanning, right? And then you can debating about whether they're accurate or not. You're gonna missing some really good candidate or sort, but it is a massively efficient way for a lot of the company who always
Sure.
receive a massive imply, right? And then I don't think a problem to have that for let's say scanning the poster as well, right? I mean, but the thing is though, like I think that is what every committee or the client or association need to make a decision on is how many power they're going to rely on the
Yeah.
result from the AI,
Yeah, and I think there's an element of, are they going to disclose that AI is being used?
right?
That's I think really important, because I think they should. I think they should, kind of say, and maybe there's manual checks or whatever it is. I think
Hmm.
that's a really interesting point. I was also thinking, once if that is in place, then there will probably be someone else who creates an AI to automatically generate posters that are guaranteed to be approved by the AI, right? Somebody will
Yeah.
reverse engineer the system, and is that because I'm sure people reverse engineer the system now in terms of they know what the professor is looking through the posters are looking for, and they'll make sure to put that in there. But when you have an AI tool doing that, is that then wrong? Is that then subverting the system somehow?
I think that's kind of what I mean. That's definitely a fascinating debate, right? And then to be fair, in my opinions, and that is kind of what human is fascinated, right? Because we were always trying to find a way that benefit us the most,
Yeah,
and no matter what the framework or the rule is, right?
yeah,
And that just means that maybe the selecting process would then need to get involved, the review process need to fix, or the requirement of the poster would then need to adapting, right? It sounds a lot of work, but if you're thinking about it, the reason we even have a poster session at the first place was back to 100 years ago. People are frustrated the old way of sharing research, and they want to find a simple. It was funny to say this right now. It's like people want to find a simple, most effective way to present their research. That's how
Mhm.
poster session being basically being designed for. And
Yeah.
right now, poster session is considered the last innovative and most boring session in a lot of the association format.
But
So
a huge part of association conferences, right? Or a lot of
but
us.
very important. And that also just showed the fact that no matter how much you're complaining about the poster is not as effective or old school as it is, you haven't been able to find a better way for people to share their research in a most simple and effective way, right?
But I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is you're actually using AI less, right?
Mhm.
And the title of this episode is "Has AI Jumped the Shark?" And "jump the shark" is an interesting term because I wasn't familiar with it until someone mentioned it, and then it turns out,
Very US turn.
yeah, very US term, based on a TV show that had Fonzie jumping water skiing over a shark in one episode, and that's sort of been kind of now it means more of a kind of past its utility, like the idea that something is just like not really that useful anymore. It's kind of and it's kind of strange for me to suggest that AI is not useful anymore, but you said it yourself in the way that you're not using it as much. And
Mhm.
could it be that AI, I mean, I think everybody will agree that ChatGPT really surprised everyone by how impressive the sort of easy results were.
Mhm.
But as you say, and I've experienced it myself, I think to get really good results is quite hard. And I
Mhm.
think from a sort of marketing and copy perspective, you can get decent results, so you can get close, so you can create something at scale, that passes, that's okay, but it won't be sort of genius marketing at any point, right? So it sort of ends up being a tool that will help you with your more menial tasks or with the more kind of relatively simple tasks that you can sort of that you probably don't like doing anyway and take up a lot of time, and then it can be helpful. But the promise of AI is so much more. And if we're sort of like reducing it to that, then could we say that AI has jumped the shark, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell. I think I will more say we right now is really just in some way taking a break. At least for some of us who are
AI's
right.
taking a break, so it's got a little kind of wheel turning, right? It's kind of like not accessible right now. Okay, great.
Yeah, but it's more for us, right? I think it's really for the user because it's I think when it first came out, especially for ChatGPT first came out, I think that excitement and surprise of how the result was real, right? That accuracy or the fast of is fascinated. And so we're also exciting about it and we also jump onto it and we started to implement them. And I think right now it's really just for those who have been using them at least for the past year progressively. It's this is the conversation we have right now, right? It's like okay, now it's almost like when you first learn how to how to walk and you're so exciting and so you start like walking everywhere and then suddenly you kind of realize what I don't need to walk every day right? I
Mhm.
can sit or I can maybe now learn to ride a bike, right? It's kind of like I feel we kind of at that stage is which I think is a very healthy stage is we take a pause and look at it. All right, this is how we use them so far and this is some of the challenge. So what should be the next, right? Should we abandon them or should we keep using it but differently? Or should technology be catching up and changing some different thing, right? I feel we kind of at that stage.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting analogy, that kind of taking a break. Is part of the issue the trusting the platform or the platform?
I think that is one because I think again like I won't say myself is a very extreme like well actually so like I believe privacy is very important but I am guilty as charged that I basically gave away my privacy to almost every online platform if you think about it. And so I was not as concerned, at least myself, as quite a few other people, but I also acknowledge that concern are real, right? Is do we
Sure.
want to give AI tool who we don't know who own it with all the information and knowledge that come with us? And I think the more and more is actually for the creative industry, right? Coming down to the copyrights and then the knowledge. Like I think lately all the AI news, at least what I saw, is the record company are suing the AI
Yeah.
company because they they pick up the song lyric that will not be authorized. And I think we're gonna see more and more like those. And I think it's a good things, right? Is that people
Yeah.
need to realize that, and the not is out of my hand as a user, but it's between them need to figure it out from the AI company and then the government and then maybe the creative source. They need to decide or come up with agreements on this is the way moving forward. So
Mhm.
as the end user, we can still somehow benefit of the collaborative from them.
But we're also, there are a lot of kind of private AIs or AIs that are only trained on a company's data,
Hmm.
and I think there's a huge opportunity here for associations that
I
have
agree.
years and years of video content, of poster sessions, and if they get AI to train only on that data, then they can have a almost a very smart advisor that can help lots of people within that field, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's a jumping the shark in the sense of we had AI, it really impressed us for a few years, but it was kind of stealing everybody's work. And what was impressing us was probably how similar the output was to a lot of the things that we see and like,
Hmm.
right? But now that we know what the tool is capable of, if you start to train it on specific things, then I think it can use its power in a much more controlled manner. Do you think that's the bulk of where you're going to see the progression? I mean, I don't think from a sort of consumer perspective that's where everybody's head is at. But from a meeting planner perspective, that might be more realistic.
Yeah, I think so. And then, I mean, actually, just thinking about it, I think another good comparison is social media, right? Because if you think about it, when social media first came out, the Facebook, the Twitter, everyone's so exciting, right? And let's specific talking about the event industry is everyone's so exciting. And suddenly, managing social media become one of the job event planner need to do, right? And then that for a couple of years, and that becomes so exhausted. And the job of social media alone becomes so complex, and then you kind of and then so what it became is it kind of progressed into a individual role, right? So like you are hiring a social media coordinator, or you will be falling under some sort of other category. For some association or company, it might still under the planner,
Mhm.
but the user case is get reduced dramatically, right? Like you are not expecting the planner to run your social media community and to get engaged and blah blah blah, right? If you want to do that, you actually need to hiring a person who dedicated to do that, and that person actually equipped with better knowledge than the general planner, right? That person will know the algorithm better. That person would actually be able to create a more compelling graphic or content to fit with social media. And I think I kind of had a feeling that I think if in a good scenario, that would be a great way how AI will evolve in the industry. Is we're starting to have AI expert, right? That specifically on how to implement AI into either your events or into your organization.
Yeah. But I'm going to disagree with you there slightly. As
Okay.
a recovering social media consultant in the
All
industry,
right.
what I found in my experience was that companies were expecting one person internally or externally to sort of do some social media magic and make them really good on social media. And it didn't really work because when the
Mm,
company was sort of relying on one person to come up, the content was very basic, right? It was sort of like, oh yeah, we got some nice pictures from the last event. Can you put them on social media? And there wasn't raw participation from everybody else. And I feel that with AI and using that same kind of comparison, it sounds like it's better if the expert comes in and trains people, on
mhm.
how to use AI securely and in an adequate way and not break copyrights and do all these things to really take the benefit of AI across the company. Because we've talked about there's so many different use cases. This is not meeting planning specific AI necessarily, but AI in general. Um, I believe, and from what I've seen from companies that are investing in sort of AI training and external help on improving, the solution is more about getting everybody on board right? Because also, if you look at things like Microsoft Copilot and Gmail that
Mhm.
are all sort of integrating AI into the platforms, we're all already using AI. Unless you sort of turn everything off and do everything manually, which I don't think a lot of people do, we're all already kind of using it, at least in small amounts, right? So isn't
Yeah.
the solution more to get everybody to a sort of next level of understanding of AI so that they can actually take advantage of it?
I think that is actually another good solution, right? To see how you go. I can see the like, and I agree with you that in order for an organization to fully benefit from AI, you need buy-in from across the organization and not just one single person. But depending on the task and depending on what the need of AI, I think that there is still an argument point that is if you should have a dedicated person whose sole job is to either potentially implement it or run it. But I definitely agree with you that it's not that person's job to make magic happen with a limited resource.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. I think we've covered most of what we were intending to. Has AI jumped the shark? Well, I don't know. It sounds like we're a little undecided on that one, but there seems to be some signs that it might have, or at least it's taking a bit of a break, as you put it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
taking a break.
taking a break. Love it. Sean, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed joining us on the podcast. For everybody listening, we'll have notes of this episode on our website. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I do. And don't forget to check out the other podcasts that Skift produces, and catch you on the next episode of the Skift Meetings podcast. Once again, thanks, Sean, for joining us today, or Yixing for joining us today.
Thanks, Miguel. Appreciate it.
Hey there, if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, please make sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave us a positive review. That really helps us get out the word about the Skift Meetings podcast and make sure that we can continue to bring you this podcast every week absolutely free of charge. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to find out whenever a new video drops.